Welcome to the CMO Weekly podcast, the show where we sit down with the world's top marketing leaders to uncover the bold moves, tough lessons, and breakthrough ideas that have shaped their journey. Every episode, we go beyond the headlines to explore what it really takes to build brands, lead teams, and stay ahead in a fast-changing industry. I'm Haley Clover, and this is CMO Weekly. This episode is brought to you by OpenFortune, the only marketing company putting your brand inside actual fortune cookies. Yep, those cookies that you crack open after dinner, they're now prime real estate for your brand message. OpenFortune distributes millions of branded fortunes every month through thousands of restaurants nationwide, giving brands a moment of surprise and attention that no banner ad can match. Want to reach people when they're smiling, engaged, and having fun? Head to openfortune.com to learn more. Okay, everyone, my guest today is someone who knows how to build brands that connect with real people, especially when the topic that they're connecting to isn't always easy to talk about. Katelyn Watson is the Chief Marketing Officer at Talkspace, where she's helping make mental health more accessible through thoughtful storytelling and smart growth strategy. She's no stranger, though, to fast-moving companies. She's led marketing at places like Nurx, Shutterfly, Cabbage, and she's always stepping in when it's time to scale, reposition, or reintroduce a brand to the world. Whether it's launching in a new market or figuring out how to grow with half the budget, Katelyn brings a sharp mix of empathy, creativity, and data-driven thinking to everything that she touches. Katelyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is great.
Of course, we're really excited to chat. I actually am a Talkspace fan, so I'm really excited to learn a little bit more just about how you found yourself there and everything that Talkspace is doing right now. It's such an incredible I have to imagine such an incredible place to work when you know you're making a difference in somebody's life every day.
It really is. And, that's part of the reason that I ended up in this role is that when I was on sort of the tail end of my journey at Nurx, we actually launched a mental health service because we had over 500,000 women who were actively using our monthly birth control service, getting birth control delivered to their homes. We launched a mental health service that was really focused around medication management and getting medication online. And the response from the patients was, oh my gosh, we have been waiting for this. We've been waiting for a trusted partner. We're already getting our birth control from you. And Nurx actually got acquired by 30 Madison. And ultimately on the tail end of my tenure there, I was like, oh, this mental health thing is amazing. The need is so great. The response is so huge. What can I do next in the space? And the Talkspace role came up. And part of the reason, aside from the mission that was so exciting, is that when I was going around talking to my friends and family and colleagues about Talkspace, every single person said, I know, first of all, yes, I know Talkspace, like huge win as a marketer because building a brand is hard. And people had really positive things to say about it. So between those two areas, it made a lot of sense.
That's awesome. Was it different coming into a brand that already had that recognition versus some of the other places that you've worked? I mean, I know some of the others like Shutterfly obviously has a large, recognition in that space, but did it feel different in terms of strategy of how you kind of had to come in and continue to keep that brand at the top of its game?
Yeah, it did. I think, a lot of the companies that I had joined and even Shutterfly at the time was very much known for just printing photos. And we really had to reinvent that brand to be known for, the photo book, all the other areas of getting your photos out of your camera. Now it's out of your phone and creating amazing things. So a lot of the companies that I have joined have been all about growth, like put the pedal to the metal post Series C or post going public, like really build that growth engine. Yeah. And building a growth engine is really core to what I've done in all of my roles. But usually for brands that are a lot less known. And okay. So what the biggest difference there is coming into a brand that was well known. It actually made building the growth playbook that much easier. Just because you don't have to get over that hurdle of, okay, sort of, building a direct response playbook, tapping into the active demand that exists out there. There isn't the hurdle of like, who is Talkspace and what are you doing? People really knew that Talkspace was synonymous with online therapy, in particular because of the genius work of our founders who really saw an opportunity with Michael Phelps in, I think right around 2020, where he was working on a film called The Weight of Gold about his journey. And there certainly is a very large mental health component. So they got together, they sort of seized that moment of time. It was kind of COVID, all things COVID, telehealth in particular coming to the forefront. There was a lot of stigma around mental health, but really he was one of the first to kind of come out and talk about it openly in that way as a guy. And people really remember that. I mean, yes, there was a lot of money spent on that campaign, but I would say, years and years later, the brand is still capitalizing on that spend that happened many years ago. And when I talk about, doing more with less and Talkspace going through a turnaround and really just spending less over time, a lot of it is that, the brand piece that is now more woven into the performance marketing, and no longer are we really sort of, Phelps and linear TV first. We're really looking at, okay, what does that day-to-day performance engine look like?
That's really cool. That partnership I actually remember a lot because it was the first athlete that I can really remember coming out in that type of way and saying, like, I'm struggling, and he was already really relatable. So what an incredible person to, I mean, relatable in the sense that, he had dealt with the scrutiny of smoking weed and like all of those other things that normal people do, but you like look at him like a superhero because he swims like an absolute maniac. So somebody like that being able to come out and being like, yeah, I also struggle, even though it looks like I might be what you're striving toward. I have serious struggles as well.
Yeah. And it ties, it really has the components of what makes a celebrity endorsement really great was the timeliness of it. Number one, the fact that it was a real story. Like we weren't trying to like force or create a story and say like, hey, why don't you try this product and, tell people that you like this company. I mean, it really was super authentic, super genuine. Even now, he is as much a part of the Talkspace brand as we are of his brand, even years and years later. Coming into the role, though, it did present some interesting challenges as we really evolved. Because, as I said, high brand awareness, everyone knew us for Phelps. Even if people didn't know what the brand exactly stood for or what our product was, they would say, oh yeah, Talkspace, that's the Michael Phelps brand. And it was like, well, yes, but we are more than that. And how do we really evolve beyond that? And so what we really had to think about, because, Talkspace used to be a direct to consumer only subscription product. So you came in, you paid a monthly cost, you had access to 4 sessions a week, ultimately kind of like a gym membership. You sort of use it or lose it. Of course, we want people to use it. But it really was that subscription service that ultimately the average person cannot afford to do sustainably on an ongoing basis. So maybe they're doing it, 1 month, 2 months while they're in crisis or something's going on. But on a long-term basis, it's really tough. So our big transition over the past few years has really been that we are in network with most of the top insurance companies. So most people actually pay a $0 copay for Talkspace. It's no longer a subscription from that perspective, in terms of just like when you go to the doctor's office, you present your insurance information and then we do the billing on the back end. But what that means is that we're accessible to most people. So that is pretty cool. So my kind of awareness challenge has sort of shifted from, who is Talkspace to, hey, did you know that therapy is now affordable? And by the way, it's not for these sort of high class problems. It's literally for everyone. And it doesn't even have to be a problem. It can just be that you are, your kind of mental fitness, you're being proactive in your career or in your relationship or whatever it might be. Our CEO frequently says, in the same way that everyone has a primary care provider, they should have a therapist. And so that is a big part of the brand shift, which is, then really figuring out, okay, where does Phelps fit into the mix?
So I was going to ask, like, what are those kind of daily changes then that you make from the marketing lens to kind of change that story and make that switch?
Yeah. So we did a rebrand. We don't call it a rebrand. We call it a brand refresh.
Sure.
That's a whole different podcast topic that we could talk about. And we really wanted to figure out, how do we now present the brand while incorporating Michael Phelps, but also this longer term mission of accessibility for everyone, for every situation, cost effectiveness, a broader type of audience, different populations, and the fact that, by the way, the stigma is from 5 years ago, just stigma of mental health. I mean, I always tell people, I'm like, I can't go 5 minutes without like something on, TV, the show Shrinking, right? The whole thing is about
love
therapy.
That show. It's
pop
so good.
culture, celebrities, people in everyday life, children and adolescents. Like, it is such a topic. So we wanted to really bring all of those things together. And I would say the biggest ways that we incorporated that into the brand is a lot of what I did at Nurx and what worked really well at Nurx, and seeing that work so well in telehealth, was bringing our own patients in. So we call them members at Talkspace, but we recruited people in. We said, we want to hear your story. We want to hear your Talkspace therapy story. Why therapy? Why Talkspace? Why does it work for you? How did we help? And several times a year, our head of brand, Baxter, he partners with people who are Talkspace enthusiasts, very, again, in the same way that we did Phelps. But these are everyday people. So people are coming in talking about everything from, I went through a breakup, to I had a stroke and went through recovery, to I'm struggling at work. We've also expanded on the teens side. So we have teens, of course, with their parents' consent, coming in talking to us about what they're preparing for, the insane amount of stress they're under with college, with social media. So, a lot of different types of pressure that I faced that I did not face when I was a teen. And then we've also expanded recently to seniors. So it's really about taking what we did with Phelps, telling that authentic story, but across the masses, across the thousands of types of stories that really we couldn't even tell the stories ourselves that we get from our members, like not even close. So
yeah, I love that. And I think, like you said, it continues to get rid of that stigma when you hear somebody that looks like you, sounds like you, has the same issues you're going through. When you can hear all those stories, it's so important. I love, love, love that you're getting younger, teens and kids in early. I would have absolutely loved to have something like that when I was younger.
To see also the things that we're seeing in that segment. We're helping segments of populations that are very underserved, that would have never had access to a therapist. We're seeing them also say things in terms of when they come in on their presenting issues, presenting problems. Why are they here? They want to be their best self. This is amazing to see for the future. Similarly, on people over 65, people who are on Medicare, we just launched with TRICARE, so all active duty military as well as their dependents and spouses are eligible for Talkspace at no cost. And so it really, again, it's like taking that authenticity of the Phelps piece and bringing that into the new brand, bringing it into our performance marketing. Certainly the table stakes are there. It has to be high quality. It has to be something that people can afford. It has to be trustworthy, a brand that people know, like that box is checked, thank goodness. And then something that's like thumb stopping and interesting, when you're scrolling on social media or in the places where you are looking for a provider. So we really make sure that we are in and around all of those places, all of those conversations that were relevant, and that we bring those real stories to the table. And then, of course, from a brand perspective, we did new colors and new fonts and a bit of language update, new photography, all sort of centered around that realness. And what we were trying to convey is that Talkspace is here to help anyone make sense of whatever is going on in their life. So sort of make sense of it was kind of the crux of what we did.
Katelyn, I love it. I love it. And yeah, to Haley's point, I think, when we were growing up as teenagers, we had to rely on other teenagers, and obviously you want the support of friends. Right. You don't always want your mental health advice and therapy necessarily coming from other teenagers. So I think that's smart. And for seniors too, like thinking even of my mother, right, who's by herself, like that's impactful, and veterans, active duty, like well done. That's really cool.
Was that a Melissa?
I'm sorry. Yeah, for those watching on YouTube, I put my coffee in a fancy glass this morning because sometimes I think you just need to make life fun.
Yeah, it kind of made me ready for Friday. And
Caitlyn, there may or may not be vodka in there. We don't know.
Yeah, I've added Kahlua and Bailey's, but it's coffee. No, it is. I'm not drinking on the job.
One thing that's been so fun with this brand evolution is, the internal side of it just as much as the external, and educating people internally inside of the company, people who are talking to clients, people who are talking to partners, about what the brand stands for, and getting them to just really stand behind it. And we had an incredible partner in Kodo, who did the Airbnb brand. They just did Amazon's rebrand. They just did Lyft's. I mean, they do incredible work. But really where they helped me come in to tell the internal story was just as important as the external story. And so now we have things like, we have named our colors, which would never matter to a consumer. They would never see that. But we've named all of our colors to correspond to something that's brand related. And like, that's the kind of stuff that the company rallies around. So this nail color is called Lifted Lemon, and it's part of our brand. And people within the company are like really embracing the colors. They're embracing who these people are who are coming into these photo shoots, like calling them by name. And so that is definitely one thing that I've learned, because a rebrand from the inside is probably harder than it is even from the outside, just to get all of the stakeholders aligned, to get people excited about it, to get people to understand that it's not just a skin, like you're not just like changing the facade, that it really will, if you do it right, if you do the research correctly, it really will help performance. And it will help just the excitement of people inside of the company getting excited to like use the new templates, use the new decks, talk to people about the brand and what it stands for. And it really does make a big difference.
That's really cool.
You just triggered a word here, and that made me think of the question I wanted to ask before. Earlier, you talked about the fact that you've kind of leaned in more on the performance engine, given the fact that people know about you, right? And you have a high level of brand awareness. We oftentimes hear the reverse. It's like once you have that level of brand awareness, that's when you ratchet up the percentage of resources and spend on brand awareness to create more relevancy, more equity, more competitive advantage, right? Because in my opinion, and please, correct me if I'm wrong, but because, and I think it's a good thing, the overall stigma on mental health has lifted over the course of the last 5-10 years, or at least shifted, right, in a more positive direction. Now there's more competitors out there, and obviously there's all points of differentiation, but ultimately it feels like it's not like commoditized in the sense like beverage or shirts or things like that, but it's becoming more and more like, oh, I have more options now of where I can go. So I wonder where that stems from of, oh, we can lean less now on brand awareness and focus more on performance. I would think you put the pedal to the metal on brand awareness over performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it more as how do brand and performance converge, really?
Sure.
And yes, I mean, thank goodness it's a huge market. There's room for a lot of players.
Yeah.
You certainly have to have the quality piece, the ability to get people matched to a therapist quickly. There's time, there's quality, there's the ability to pay. So 1 in 3, we work with Qualtrics. We do ongoing brand awareness studies. 1 in 3 people actually know who Talkspace is. And if you don't know who Talkspace is and you see the brand, I would say most people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of Talkspace. So we had such a strong foundation, but what we really wanted to nail were all of those in-market segments. So not just people who knew about Talkspace, because not everyone is going to do therapy, right? People who might consider doing therapy, people who are at certain life stages, people who, maybe look like people who are often in therapy, hint, it's women. 80% of our customers are women. And we really wanted to go deeper on those targets with our performance marketing. So we're bringing all of the elements into the, I call it brandformance. I think other people have other.
We hear brandformance a lot.
We use it. Yeah, we get it.
I just call it the brand and performance flywheel. We have enough of a foundation, especially relative to our competitors, because we were one of the first. I mean, certainly there is BetterHelp, which spends a lot on media. They're one of the largest podcast spenders, probably spend media budget by 25 times what we spend, but we have the cost piece nailed. And so that's where we're really differentiating significantly. And then there's a lot of other digital players who are very similar to Talkspace, and it kind of depends on preference. If you're new to therapy and you've never been to therapy, you might not want to search through a long list of therapists. You might just want to be matched with a therapist, and that's what we do. So there's a whole host of different preferences that we also try to communicate with the advertising. So for us, it really was about like kind of converging the two together, making sure that we're getting in front of enough people, we're getting in front of the right people, and the media dollars are performing and getting us what we want. The other piece of it was reaching new audiences just through the sheer sake of new channels. We were relying very heavy on linear TV in particular. And we would get our mixed model reporting. We would get it, several months later. It was very challenging to see the overall performance and impact of what we were doing. And my background just being in performance and digital marketing and knowing how to come in and really pull all the key channels together, look at incrementality, while also, by the way, putting impressions out there in front of people through the channels at mass, ultimately, in a targeted way. We were really able to hit on a lot of the same things that we were with brand. The other thing is, because we had our first profitable quarter in January month and quarter, and have been ever since January 2024. So very happy about that, because it gives us a lot of ability for growth. But a lot of what happened when we significantly took down marketing spend. And again, a lot of it was brand. We were doing out of home in Times Square. We were doing street teams, subway, bus ads. And to the credit of the early stage of Talkspace, that's how we got to where we are today. And like I said earlier, we're still capitalizing on a lot of that brand spend. However, where we really have been flexing our muscle in the past year or so is partnerships. So a lot of what we would have been able to get through traditional brand marketing, we are now partnering with many companies in and around our space who are adjacent services, who have similar audiences, where we can really go to market together. So one of our first partners was with Aura, the Aura Ring. And again, a very kind of perfect, love that.
Carla's wearing one
right now. But it was one of our very first, and we wanted to see, you put a lot of effort into these partnerships. How are they going to perform? So again, in the similar kind of Phelps manner, we wanted to make sure that it was sort of came together organically, and it did. They were launching a sleep feature where you could download your sleep information, and we were like, well, they can upload that into Talkspace and share it with their therapist to have a more robust conversation about their sleep, which there's a lot of, to mental health. And so that came together really well. We got a ton of press from it. They had something they were focused on, which was, getting into health, like more healthcare. And we were very focused on just brand relevancy and getting out to a large audience. So it was sort of like each brand had something the other one wanted, and it came together really well. And so after that, then we launched a health collective, which is a collection of adjacent brands to help people through their healthcare journey. So of course we do therapy, but maybe you're going through menopause, maybe you need help with fertility, maybe you need a nutrition or a fitness partner. So we brought all of these partners together in one place. And we usually are communicating them, we're sharing them with our members, we're creating it as a member benefit, but we're getting that brand awareness through their marketing. So they're incorporating us into their own communications. And so not only has our performance increased, and you can just see that in our quarterly earnings numbers, with our Qualtrics metrics, our brand awareness has increased significantly, even with the declining spend, because we've replaced what we did in the early days with all of these partnerships. And, I can't say that partnerships are the thing that's going to be the next thing to replace performance marketing. But from a brand perspective, it really does get you in front of a lot of new audiences.
That's really smart, and I get it. And CMO of Delta, Alicia Tillman, mentioned something similar, like they're leaning into moments in time, and she and I have had deep conversations about that. I actually agree with that, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. Does that mean that you pull away from all other forms of what you would consider traditional brand marketing, or you lean less into them? Do you still think that there's a place for them? I'm just curious on your thoughts on like where that fits into the ecosystem between kind of treading the line between performance and what do you consider brand partnership marketing?
I mean, it depends on where you are as a brand and your budget and what you're trying to do. So I would say, I follow very close to the telehealth, high growth, direct to consumer, subscription based companies. And, there's been a race to profitability. Like we were all getting valuation based on, high growth, but not necessarily profit. And that changed. And if that's where you are, then you have to figure out how to do more with less. There's really no choice. If you're a much bigger brand and you have larger budgets and the fundamentals are there and you're profitable, or profitability isn't necessarily your focus, you're going to tap out on some of the digital media channels, and you need to go broader. There is still a place for linear TV. There is still a place for doing the sort of local city by city groundswell, depending on the product. And, if you look at all the Airbnb case studies, that's really a lot of where they shifted their marketing to as well. Although I look at all of that and I'm like, don't tell me they're not also doing performance. Like, yes, they are. But it really is more about the balance and being able to make the performance just do that, do that much better, just because people are more aware of your brand. So there absolutely is a place for it. It really depends on the stage and where you are. And
I love that you said that.
This does drive brand, like 100%.
The right type, I think, absolutely can. Yeah,
we look at our "How did you hear about us?" surveys. We look at, where those people heard about us and did they tell their friends, that word of mouth component. So all of those things are certainly driving a flywheel. And by the way, a lot of the media that we would have purchased in a more traditional direct, upfront fashion, as a larger brand or with a bigger budget, we're getting the same media. We're just buying it in a different, more performance. Maybe it's more remnants. Maybe it's, instead of doing all host-read ads on podcast, we're shifting that to be more programmatic. And like, you're still on podcast, you're still getting in front of the same people, getting the same type of reach and coverage, just buying it in a different way.
Makes complete sense. And I do agree with you.
There was a post that I read, Carlo, you'll love this, that Caitlyn, you've grown Talkspace sessions by 90% year over year on 50% smaller of a budget.
It's wild.
That's insane.
Now, does that mean single sessions or not the time spent in sessions? I mean single sessions, like additional sessions between the user.
Yeah. And this is everything. Okay, I'll take credit for a lot of it, but there's a lot that went into that. We could have never done that had we not had the in-network component of being covered by insurance. That is certainly a huge offering, and part of the the brand piece and the brand transition was not just, okay, we're moving from Phelps and we're going to now start talking about how we accept insurance. It really is how we explain to people that therapy is not a luxury and you can afford it. And here's why. And by the way, the call to action is not, isn't necessarily like sign up for a subscription or join now. It is check your coverage, see if you are covered, because that is really, aside from the quality and all of the things people know Talkspace for, they just want to know, is it covered? It's the same thing that you think about when you search for a dermatologist or any type of doctor. You know, you need a pair of glasses, whatever it is. The first thing you're like, who's going to pay for it? And by the way, people make decisions in their healthcare, whether their insurance is paying for it or not. They make the purchase decision in the same way that they would if it was coming out of their own bank account.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a point of differentiation for you guys compared to other players in the space?
It is, I would say, less and less, because the only way to have a future of mental health care accessible to everyone is to continue to expand that coverage. So I believe that we do have the highest number of what we call covered lives. So the number of people that we cover. And this is really part of the reason why we partner with Amazon. If you're on Amazon now and you can shop in their health benefits checker, you can enter your employer, enter your, who your payer is. So I go in and I can put Cigna and it'll tell me that I'm covered for Talkspace, and then you can come right over to Talkspace. And they only selected 2 partners for that because of that, that vast in-network coverage. So there is and this is why earlier when we chatted, I was like, we have to talk about AI because differentiation in this market is key. And I think differentiation, we talk about it internally all the time. It differs depending on differentiation to who, right? We have clients and partners who we actually sell a Talkspace product to for their population. So we cover all teens 13 to 17 in the city of New York. That's a partnership directly with the health department. We also partner with several large employers who bring Talkspace on behalf of their employees. The way that we differentiate ourselves to those different audiences might be different if I'm talking to you, Haley, as a consumer and saying, here's why you should use Talkspace. And so why I wanted to bring up AI is that we are bringing in a lot of really exciting AI innovations. We launched Talkcast earlier this year, which is our personalized podcast created by AI. So it takes into account information from your session with your therapist, other information that we have based on past therapy sessions within the Talkspace ecosystem. This is for people over 18. This is for people who opt in. These are all the disclaimers and things that I have to say. And the therapist actually said, reviews it before it comes to you. But ultimately, when you're in your therapy room, if you will, after your session, it will say, hey, would you like to hear a personalized podcast that you can listen to in between sessions that takes all of those things into account? So it's a way to really take AI and create that, in between session across the Talkspace journey.
That's awesome.
That makes you really, focus and practice the exercises that you might be learning in therapy. So now I'm starting to think about, and I just did a very long LinkedIn post on this, so it's top of mind. I'm starting to think about, okay, what is everyone talking about related to AI and marketing? They're talking about their stack, their tools. What tools are you using for ad creation, copywriting, workflows, to really make your team more efficient? I'm thinking about, how do I market AI products? Because especially in the mental health arena, there's a lot related to what is going on in the world of AI therapy. Do I trust something that's clinical that has the word AI tied to it? So we're thinking about, how do we create that education? How do we talk about these new tools and services alongside what to be Talkspace? And how do we really put that to the forefront as a differentiator without muddying the water of we still want it to be simple, what we're communicating. So that has been a unique challenge. We just launched our first section on the Talkspace website a couple of days ago that really talks about what we do for AI. The other big piece is, the Talkspace product is the therapist. You are buying time with a therapist. You want the therapist to be good and efficient and effective and, have that therapeutic bond. And, there's a whole host of things that people look for in a therapist. You want them to be available. So how do we help help our therapists really do their best work, free up time for them to even be able to have more hours in the day to meet with patients. And it's really AI. And it's not AI doing their work for them at all. It's AI helping them maybe like write their post-session notes or giving insight, when you come into a session to say like, hey, this is like reminder, this is like what Haley talked about. And so it really empowers the provider, which as a patient, it's hard to communicate those things. And so that's a lot of what we're working on is like, how do we bring it in? When do we bring it in?
It's funny. It's like you've worked on the stigma of going to therapy in general, and now you have to work on the stigma of AI being trustworthy. Yeah. You've just added another stigma for yourself, but it makes so much sense because even when I've been in therapy, I come back the next session and they might say, remind me of exactly what we started with last session. And I'm like, isn't that your job? Like I already went through the whole thing and I said it all already. I don't want to talk about it again. Those are all those tools that can absolutely help that and mitigate, those types of situations.
Exactly. And at the same time, a therapy bot, there's many of them out there. That is not for everyone. That is not what Talkspace does. And so we want to be able to talk about AI in a way that's helpful and that people understand and how we're actually helping them and not freak people out. Like you're seeing all the headlines, right? An AI therapy chatbot did XYZ. So that is really, aside from the tech stack, which is just sort of there, we're testing and trying a lot of new things. That is a big area of focus for us. The other one is really just the new world of search, and search looks pretty different, even over the last few months than it used to be in terms of the LLMs and understanding where you're showing up. People are searching differently than they used to search. Social content has never been more important. Like where everyone is, I can't even tell you how many webinars I've been on in the last few weeks about Reddit.
I love Reddit. I'm a big Reddit.
All of a sudden talking about Reddit. What do we do as a brand? How do we get in front of it? How do we have those conversations? And it's all because of the Gemini AI search component within Google. So that is just it's a big area of topic. But I've learned this is a great time to be alive as a marketer because I'm learning so much. I feel like it's like the early 2000s when I was like learning about Google search and digital marketing. People thought it was like the weird, crazy part of marketing. And like, here we are again with AI. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think if you can have that perspective, where it's really cool and it's exciting to learn all of these new things and have all of these tools at your disposal, that it doesn't have to be a scary time, or that, change is uncomfortable, but that's where everyone can grow. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's the playing with all the tools that are out there and seeing all the companies who have not been AI focused, all of a sudden they've got the best AI features. And, the advice that I give to my team is we are just very much encouraged to look at all of them. So if it's a search monitoring tool, if it's a tool for optimizing creative, what a media partner, whatever it is, look at all of them, understand the differences. What we've seen is that most of our media partners, most of our vendors, like our we use Braze for Lifecycle as an example. They're bringing things in. They're building things very quickly. So it isn't, as a marketer, I would say like you should know what else is out there, but really challenge all the existing media partners, vendors, agencies, everyone that you have that you're already working with. Like, what are you doing on AI? How can you help us? What are the key areas of focus? Like we're doing this with our SEO agency right now, is like, what is that long-term playbook? Just given, like the volume from the LLMs is not that big, but it is very fast growing up and to the right. So how do we be ready for it? And that's ultimately how you'll figure out, do we have the right partners and vendors in place for, the future of what's going on in AI?
I think that's awesome. I guess to kind of wrap all this up, because I thank you, I've taken up, a good amount of your time. This has all been awesome to kind of talk about and learn from. other than just AI, like where do you see the future of Talkspace going over the next couple of years? That I guess maybe you're excited about, whether it's just an overall company focus or from the marketing team in general.
Yeah. So Talkspace has, we're known for therapy. We added a psychiatry service, I think, post-COVID. Most people don't know us for psychiatry. So really helping people to understand that you can come to us with any mental health challenge. And so psychiatry is one example of that. We talked a little bit about AI. AI now opens the door for all of these other different tools that you might be able to use throughout the day. We also, last year, we launched specifically for teens, we launched peer communities. So where this is really all going, and I've been actually brainstorming on this with our brand team, is mental health care is not like once a week, you just have this hour-long session and then you go away and everything's fine. But it's really, how is it woven in and out throughout your day, throughout your week, in all of these different ways? So I like using Aura as an example because you're Aura-ing users, right? Like you're using it when you're waking up in the morning, like you're looking how your sleep is going, you're understanding your stress throughout the day, you're doing a meditation, you're really using it all the time. So I think with all of these new added products and services, in addition to AI added onto Talkspace, that is going to be the next frontier for us. Is not this just like session-based, book a session, come to us once a week. And part of that will be evolving the brand and how we talk about the brand, but also we talked a little bit about differentiation. How do we bring in that as a differentiator relative to competitors in a way that's not too clunky, right? Like in an ad, obviously I'm not going to talk about all of these things, but maybe I bring in a Talkspace user who's talking about their day in the life and or their week with Talkspace and what that looks like. So I think that's a big part of it as we scale.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. That was great. There's a lot in there that I know people will be able to learn from. And if they want to follow along with Talkspace, where can they find you, one, on social? And then where can they follow you along as well if they want to follow your career?
Probably LinkedIn for me is the best place. You can find me. Our social team does an incredible job also on LinkedIn. Instagram, I think, is a great place to just watch our stories. Our chief medical officer does a lot of talks. Our team is really good also at just following trends and looking at how do those trends relate in the social media trends, how do they relate to therapy? I think Instagram is a good place. But I will add a plug. We most recently started being a lot more engaged and advertising on X. And it's going really well. And our number one ad actually says, "So, that happened." It's genius. And to the credit of our head copywriter and brand team, literally something happens every day right now.
Oh, especially on X, there's all sorts of stuff.
Every day, yesterday was the whole Coldplay thing. And every day I'm scrolling on X and I see our ad and I'm like, this will always be relevant. Like this is just the ad. And so really happy that we kind of put that stake in the ground during all the conversations that were happening, especially during the election, and putting ourselves out there when some brands didn't necessarily want to. And it's gone really well. So you can find us on X too, if you're there.
So fun. Well, thank you again. This wraps up another episode of CMO Weekly. And if you have, some fun listening to us, you got something out of this conversation, feel free to share it with a teammate, drop us a review, hit follow so that you're not missing any of our episodes. And we'll be back next week with more stories, strategies, and surprises from the minds that are shaping modern marketing. Thank you so much, Caitlyn. And thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers to your mimosa coffee.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers.